Hello, everybody. My name is Angie Peacock. I'm a psychiatric drug withdrawal consultant and a healing coach. Welcome. Today, we are going to talk to Melissa Boutilier. Did I say your name right?
Boutilier.
Boutilier. I thought it was French, like Canadian.
What is? It's Boutilier is the way the French say it.
Boutilier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
But so wait, how did you say it?
Boutilier.
Boutilier. Okay. Well, that's
Yes.
more Americanized. It feels like USA twang. Okay. Well, anyway, if you're watching on YouTube, please do us a favor. I'm going to have Melissa's YouTube channel down below. If you will hit subscribe to her channel and then hit subscribe to my channel, that would help. If you're on Facebook, you can share it, you can like it, whatever. It shows support. It helps it move it up in the algorithm because that's how the stuff works nowadays. Anyway, today I want to give a disclaimer before we get started. Melissa is a very severe case. I was a very severe case. That's why we relate to each other. That's why we have found each other through a trauma bond or something. I don't know. So if you feel sensitive today to severe cases, maybe the S word, maybe the A word, maybe you're feeling fragile. I mean, I promise you by the end, we will give you inspiration and hope because I always end on hope. But just in case you feel fragile, please step away from this episode, go watch another. It's fine. It'll be here when you're ready. Okay, so Melissa, I don't want to read your whole bio because it's amazing, but I want you to tell us. So let's just start from how did you come to be prescribed antidepressants and benzos and the whole nine? What happened?
Well, it was 2011, and actually, I had experienced a job loss. So I got laid off and I was feeling depressed, I guess you could say. I don't know if you'd call it like a depressive disorder, but I was having trouble getting out of bed, being motivated, taking care of my diabetes, just sort of feeling down, feeling blue, just not kind of isolating. And biggest regret of my life personally, decided to talk to my doctor about that, even though it had a very clear cause. And right away I was prescribed can I say the drug names on here?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Just usually say the generic so they don't sue us.
Sure. Yeah.
You know.
I was prescribed citalopram. So SSRI, I was started right away on a fairly high dose and had no idea. I remember my doctor specifically saying to me, this is just an antidepressant. You know, it's not one of those really addictive drugs. So if you decide in the future, you want to come off, it's no problem. Most people don't have any issues. So I'm like, okay, if this will help me feel better, sure thing. And honestly, it did. Within like 2 weeks, I was totally back to normal. I felt like I could sleep again. I could socialize. I felt motivation. I felt happiness. And I'm like, this is a wonder drug. I really did think it was like the best thing. So, stayed on it, ended up staying on it for 7 years, even though I got a job within another, I don't know, month or two. And so the cause of those depressive feelings was then eliminated, but the drug was continued. So I was having regular visits with my doctor all of those 7 years because of my diabetes. And he would always start off the conversation by saying, how's the mood? And I would say, oh, I feel fine. And so there was never any conversation about, well, maybe we could come off. Or I did have some of the sort of typical side effects like sexual dysfunction, nothing severe, weight gain, emotional blunting. But to me, it was kind of a welcome change because I had always I had a very stressful job, even though I loved it. Like when I went back, I actually got the job back that I got laid off from. So it was all for nothing, all of this prescribing. So, and I loved it. It was stressful though, and I felt invincible on the drugs. So, but after I did notice into my 4th and 5th year, I was having what I now think was breakthrough symptoms. I started getting those thoughts. I started having nocturnal panic attacks. The anhedonia was getting really bad. Just all kinds of like severe anxiety that would come out of nowhere. And I just linked it to, well, I have a stressful job and I was in a new relationship. So, and then finally in 2018, I was in a very bad financial state. And so I was like, anything that's not keeping me immediately alive has got to go. And I was like, I don't think these drugs are really doing that much anymore. I've been on them long enough. I'm going to talk to my doctor about tapering. So at this point, I had seen a new doctor because I had moved cities, and he was like, yeah, cut the dose in half for 2 weeks, cut it in half again for 2 weeks. You'll be off in a month. And I'm like, okay, I didn't know to look into it. I was told, again, this wasn't addictive. So why do I need to worry? Didn't even know there was an antidepressant withdrawal syndrome. Had never heard of it. So I started getting symptoms shortly after the discontinuation of the drug, but didn't connect it at all. Not at all. I was like, oh, I just have the return of my original anxiety, even though it had been under control for years. That depression, I had crushing migraines, fatigue, and that was when the intrusive thoughts started. That was my worst symptom all along. So this was in 2018, and I had a fairly long list of symptoms. At one point I told my doctor, I'm feeling really anxious. This was probably 2 months after I discontinued, and he offered me a benzo. And
Oh.
luckily I knew enough about benzos that they were like the addicting drugs. And so I was like, I'm not going to take a benzo. I'll just cope.
Mhm.
And I struggled and I struggled and I struggled for 2.5 years with symptoms, but a lot of them were dissipating, especially the physical ones, but the mental was still bad for me. So I had a lot of looping, intrusive thoughts, just
This is on the
totally.
drug, right? You're still on, or this point you're off?
No, this is when I'm off. So I'm two
Okay.
and a half years off.
Okay.
And
Okay.
a lot of those symptoms that had come on after discontinuation were dissipating, but the mental was still really bad for me. And at this point, like I knew about withdrawal because I had been, Googling what's going on with me, but I was so torn because I had this withdrawal community that was saying it's the drugs, it's withdrawal, but I didn't have windows and waves. So I'm like, this is not withdrawal. I had convinced myself it's
Mm.
been way too long. Nobody has these mental thoughts, looping thoughts like me. And then I let myself, the medical system infiltrate kind of into my consciousness by saying, you just have OCD, you just have anxiety, you
Mhm.
just have the
Wow.
return of your condition.
Yep.
So at 2.5 years off, I reinstated. So I
Wow.
reinstated a 20th of my dose, so 1 milligram. And I had been on 20 for 7 years. And I did a micro dose because at this point I was pretty well educated about the withdrawal syndrome, the benzo buddies, SA,
Mhm.
all those things.
Yep.
And it was just like a bomb went off in my nervous system and I
Was
started getting
1/30th of your original dose.
20th, 1/20th.
1/20th. So
Yeah,
1 milligram, a bomb
one
goes off.
milligram. And then again, I'm like, is this the drug? I just couldn't wrap my head around. Like I had taken this drug for so many years at a high dose, and why can't I tolerate 1 milligram? It must just be psychosomatic. It must just be everything
Right.
I've read on the forums. This isn't really happening. But I would lay down and try to go to sleep, and it was just like a bomb would go off in my head, and I would just hear like gunshots, and I would have cortisol rushes and just panic attacks that were like next level and just could not function at all.
Mhm.
But then I still was like, hey, it's just startup effects because I'm reading the reviews on drugs.com and they're like, just push through. It's just a startup effect. This is why some people use benzos to get on antidepressants.
Oh,
And
how confusing.
I know, and I knew in my gut, I'm like, I just don't think that's true, but I'm just going to listen to this. And so I was upping my dose slowly. I got to 2.5 milligrams and then I got akathisia and I could feel it starting, but it was fairly mild at that point, but I started to kind of panic because I'm like, I know this is bad. And my thoughts were getting worse. They were speeding up. They were incredibly violent in nature. And I'm like, I thought these drugs were supposed to help this OCD that I have, that every doctor is telling me that I have.
Right.
Why, I couldn't even really think straight at that point because it was just violent image after violent image after violent image. And it was just absolutely nonstop cortisol rushes, panic attacks, but I pushed through and I pushed myself up to 10 milligrams.
Wow.
And then I started having blacking out, passing out episodes,
Wow.
like severe like blood pressure problems. My pulse was sky high. I would just collapse just on the bathroom floor. And I remember saying to my mom, I think it's the drug. But and then I went to the hospital and I told them the situation. I said, I think this might be from this drug. And they're like, well, we don't know that for sure. So we're not going to give you any while you're here. And
Mm.
we're going to run a bunch of tests. But of course, everything was fine. I wasn't in the psych ward at this point. But they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. So, I had a couple hospital admissions. They're like, we don't know if this is hormonal. We don't know. But never, ever did anybody say, we think it's the drug, even though I said, I think I'm having a reaction to this drug.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I did this whole reinstatement. I was off and on and off and on because I would stop citalopram and then I would tell myself, no, this mental stuff is so severe, I have to get it under control.
Mm.
So I'd go on and off citalopram. Then I ended up in the hospital again, met with a psychiatrist that said, you're on the wrong medication based on,
Oh my
no blood
gosh.
tests, there's never
Oh, yeah, but
any
here's the tricky part that I'm hearing in your story. Like, for instance, I say this thing about, when you read the FDA insert for a drug, it'll say dizziness. And so you
Yes.
assume I'm just going to be lightheaded when I get out of bed, take it easy, don't get up too fast. But the level of dizziness and withdrawal from the drug is like no, you're walking on a tightrope across the Grand Canyon. You can't, you're with a gun pointed at your head. It's
Right.
So when you go to the emergency room and you describe a bomb went off in my body, I'm reacting to this drug. They think that's anxiety. And it's like, no, no,
Yes.
no. I literally mean a bomb went off in my body. Something broke in my nervous system. I felt it.
And
So
I could almost hear like a gunshot. Like when I would lay down in bed, it would just be this loud boom, and I would just jolt like this, and I couldn't sleep. And so then the polydrugging started. So I was, pushed from one psychiatrist to another. This girl's got severe OCD. She's got, psychosis or whatever they were calling it. So I tried Prozac and Zoloft and Luvox, and then they're like, let's boost the antidepressant with some antipsychotics. So that's when the pacing started. So I took Seroquel and Risperidone, and nothing was helping. And I even went and got TMS done because that's a natural alternative to psych drugs. And I needed this mental stuff under control. So this is where it gets bad. So,
but wait, looking back, what do you think that was happening to you upon reinstatement?
I think it was like an akathisic reaction. And it was like, because a lot of people don't talk about the mental aspect of akathisia. It's so easy for it to get confused with psychosis, severe OCD, hallucinations. But I could feel in my body, like I just had vibrations and pulsating electricity. And I'm like, something is going on. And why would my brain, it doesn't just cut off here and then the brain is fine, So I was like, at this point, I'm starting to clue in it was the drugs all along and really believe it. But so it was just getting worse and worse and worse. Every drug I took, I was getting new symptoms, even at low doses. And the mental was getting very, very severe. That was when I started hallucinating, couldn't sleep at all, 5 nights straight. So I remember just pacing around the apartment, just feeling delirious, DPDR, walls closing in, like just hysterical. And one psychiatrist at one point had given me Ativan. And I'm like, I know this is a benzo. I only had 10 pills, but I'm like, I'm desperate to sleep. I'm desperate for this bomb to like stop exploding in my body. So I took one Ativan and it was like a dream. It's like, it took away everything.
Wow.
Slept like a baby. And I'm like, okay, I've only got 10, but I knew the dangers of benzos. And so I'm like, I'm only going to take 4. And then I'm just going to hope it kind of calms things down enough for me to function again. Because at this point I'm housebound. I'm not doing I can't do anything. So I ended up, I'm not sure how much to say about it at this point, but I was very influenced by the forums at this point. And so they had said, you're feeling well-ish on Ativan, you should continue to take benzos until you totally stabilize and then do micro taper. So I did, I was like going to different doctors and saying like, I need Ativan, because sometimes I couldn't get in to see my family doctor and I would run out of pills. And so so then I was on Ativan for 3 months. I stayed on it. But at the 2-month mark, I was like, I started going paradoxical actually around 1 month. So what happened was I started developing involuntary movements. And so that had started on either one of the antipsychotics or one of the antidepressants. I can't quite remember because I was taking so many different drugs. But at one point I started getting involuntary movements. And then the benzo had helped that. And then after about a month, it wasn't helping. And I would notice after about an hour after taking my dose, the movements would actually get worse. And so then I was advised by the forums, start splitting the dose. So then I was taking Ativan in the morning and in the evening. Then I was taking Ativan 3 times a day. Then I was taking it 4 times a day. And I'm like, this is insane. Like I might as well have like a PIC line with Ativan. Like I could not function. It was,
Did that help when you split doses, or it made it worse, or what?
It always would help initially. And then very quickly it would stop helping.
Wow.
So I'm like,
so you and I talked about this before our call today, just like the need for stabilization. We'll get into it more later, but it's like it's a slippery slope, because like you felt okay for a minute and then boom, it's paradoxical. It's like your nervous system was just so screwed at that point. It's like
it was.
So
and I'd taken so many drugs, and I took benzos for a month before they went at Paradoxical. I was taking it 4 times a day, and I'm like, I've got to get off this. Now I'm like, okay, it was the drugs all along. My symptoms are so severe at this point mentally. Like I'm like pretty much full blown psychotic, pacing. Like I have just, my whole body feels electrified. involuntary movements, full body burning, like burning brain, screaming tinnitus, like all of these symptoms. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to start doing a micro taper of the Ativan, a water titration. So I do that and I get down from 1 milligram to 0.6, and the involuntary movements are so severe that my mom ends up calling 911. I'm in an ambulance, taken to the ER. They're like, you have a severe case of anxiety. I'm like, I've had panic.
My body's physically moving. What do you mean?
Like, I mean, full body jerking.
No,
like,
I mean like you're showing like physical symptoms, and they're saying that that's anxiety.
Yes. And then they're like, Uni, you belong in the psych ward. So they put me in the psych ward. I'm hysterically bawling. I'm like, nobody's listening to me. And I remember pacing around the psych ward, and my stomach was contracting so much that I remember standing in front of a nurse and like folding in half like this. And she's just like, can I offer you some water?
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like hearing screaming, like I'm hearing screaming in my head. I'm seeing violent images. I'm literally like folding at the waist, like repetitively, just bawling and pacing, like circling around. And I'm just like, my God, like I remember just laying awake at night and just being like, what has happened to me?
Yeah.
You know?
Because it happens so fast too. Like you remember your normal life, and then a series of events happen, and then boom, you're brain damaged.
Yeah, right. And I had my initial SSRI withdrawal, which I thought was bad, but then the polydrugging and benzo, because then they cold turkeyed me off the rest of the benzo in the hospital.
Oh gosh.
But then once they put me in the psych ward, they're like, you need antipsychotics. So they try to give me Zyprexa, and they're trying to give me all of these other drugs. And finally, I remember just exploding in rage and saying, you people are the reason that I'm in this state. I went from a fully functioning, high stress management position to like sleeping in bed with my mom at 38, living with my mom after being independent for 17 years, rocking, tugging at my clothes, pacing around. Like this is a trigger. I don't know if I should say it. Like,
wait. If you're sensitive, press mute for 1 minute and then come back. Hold on. Just give him a second.
Sure.
If you're sensitive, press mute. I know this is a very triggering conversation. I know. Okay. Proceed.
So that was when I started self-harming, bashing my head, pulling my hair out,
I've heard of it.
Screaming, and just planning. So I was planning. I'm like, I just can't take this anymore. My hair was falling out. I mean, I was a complete and total basket case. And I had one person who was my rock, and that was my mom. And she believed me when everybody else was like, I have a lot of medical people in my family who were like, you were on the drugs once before, you should be perfectly fine going back on them. If you need them, you need them. Yeah. So it was, so I left against medical advice. I told the psych ward, I said, I'm done. I'm so done with you people. Like, you let me rot in this room. I'm moving involuntarily. Nobody's helping me. I see the psychiatrist like 5 minutes a day. I told him, because they're trying to prescribe me more drugs, I said, you have to give me a small dose. I'm very sensitive. And I got laughed at and gaslit. And I'm like, I'm so done. Like, give me the papers. I was just irate. Yeah. Yes. And so I signed the papers. I grabbed my stuff, and I'm like, I'm never touching this stuff again. And I'm so determined to heal. But the next 6 months were the most trying 6 months of my life. I mean, it was more than 6 months, but that was when the very acute stage was, when I was planning my way out.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that decision saved your life, first of all. So I commend you for that there was enough fight left in you to like, get out of here. Like, I got to get out of here. So take me through that acute stage again. For those joining us late, I see there's many more people on now. This is a very triggering conversation. Melissa's a very severe case. So was I. We're both in very good places now. So we are here to bring you hope, but we're also here to talk about like severe polydrugging, severe polypharmacy, the A word and the S word possibly. So please do what's best for you. If it's too triggering, just turn it off. You will not hurt our feelings. You have to do what's best for your nervous system at this time. Okay. So with all that said, let's continue on acute stage. And really what I want to get to here is like when you are severe, and maybe you're reading the forums and you're seeing that like nobody has symptoms like you, nobody's talking about these severe harm urges, images like you and I both had. I know that I couldn't even find people with the stuff that was happening in my head, and I would try to read between the lines, and I would say like, mental symptoms, and I would search for like terror, but like it still wasn't. It
doesn't even describe it.
No, it wasn't quite what I was experiencing, like a different realm of a new dimension. I was not here. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm most interested in hearing from you, from your perspective and your experience, and I'm as I'm saying this, I'm realizing maybe you will bring me some healing here, but how did you get through that? Like mindset, like spiritually, emotionally, because like you, it's the most horrific, painful, scary, isolating, inhuman, cruel experience that I think is allowed on this planet. And there's no language for it. So
Should I talk about my mental symptoms? I don't know, because I know that mental is very there's so much
subjective.
stigma around it, and people, I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, oh my, like once I've shared it on YouTube with many trigger warnings, people said, oh my God, like this is me, you know.
I would just say I don't want us to get kicked off YouTube. So keep it pointing in that, you know what I mean? Like don't get super descriptive, but yeah, give
Okay,
us a little
yeah,
bit of idea.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't just have like images. I would have, I always would have these thoughts, like images of a weapon coming forcefully at me from the back, from the front. I would hear screaming, evil, satanic, like in my head over and
Yeah.
over and over. So I would physically feel, after I took
Yeah.
benzos, I would physically feel the
Your thoughts.
coldness. I
Yeah.
would feel them. I'd feel the
Yes.
coldness. I'd feel very aggressive. Like I remember walking and I would have just this sharp image of something just whacking me in the back, and
I had
my whole body would just lunge forward. And I'm like, people must think I'm absolutely crazy. And I'm just like, stop. And I would push it away and scream. And oh, it was just
I
horrible.
know. Horrible.
Yeah. And just the things I would hear, and oh, I won't even get into the description, but it was like voices, but not. And
To me, that experience was like there's something broken in my subconscious mind where everything subconscious or unconscious is coming up. Like
yes,
it was just like, for instance, like if I looked at a coffee cup, it wasn't a coffee cup. It was a weapon and it was
yes,
dangerous and I would feel it and it was visceral. And my thoughts
visceral.
were loud and would come with adrenaline as if I were to just do something with it. Like it was
Yes,
not,
yes,
it's not this like intrusive, obsessive rumination. No, it's like another level. And honestly, if I'm being transparent here, usually I can tell, like when I meet new clients, you know, I listen to them and then I ask them like, how's your mental symptoms? One of my questions, because I want to know like what level are they up there? And there's very few of us that experience this kind of stuff. Very
yes.
few, very
Mhm.
few.
Yeah. And so, I'm getting told, you're having somatic hallucinations, you're having all this, you need antipsychotics. Like I went through every psychiatrist here. And I just kept getting told the same thing and threatened, the police will come pick you up. You need to come to the ward. We have a bed for you, just over and over. Um, so how did I get through it? Well, first of all, I tell people this. I actually was able to find, the forums are kind of a double-edged sword because there's so much horror on there and half stories. So you don't hear everything. But then there's also people who are only people that understand what you're going through. And so I had formed this video chat support group. I've talked about this before. Women, all severely affected, some benzos, some antidepressants, all different kinds of drugs. Most had akathisia in some form. And we would just literally, from the moment we got up to the moment we went to bed, we would have video chat and you could just hop on and off for support.
Amazing.
I mean, screaming, bawling, it didn't matter. It was my lifeline because the people in my real life were like, I can't hear about this anymore. All you do is talk about this. Like you need to start functioning. And I couldn't. So that was one of my lifelines. Also, again, there's a mix between reading the success stories and then not getting addicted to the horror stories. So I had a few success stories that I would just read over and over and over and over and over. And I'm a very stubborn person. So there was a large part of me that was like, I can't let these drug companies win. I can't let them steal. They've already stolen so much from me. I can't. Like I would go between broken and planning my escape to no, and it sounds crazy, but
I had that thing too, where it was like, I know if I die there by my own hand, they would say, oh, she was a crazy disabled veteran and we tried to help her, blah, blah, blah. And she was mentally ill. And I was like, no, that's not what's happening. And I'm going to stay alive at all means necessary to tell you how wrong you are. I am not letting them get me. No freaking way. That's not what's happening. Yep.
And I used to write a script and make videos talking about the future as if it was happening. So, I am healed, I'm doing this, and this is what my life looks like. It's very powerful. And now when I read it back, I just cry because a lot of it has happened, but it was absolute hell to get there. So I'll say after about 6 months of acute. So I quit the drugs in February of 2021 for good. That was my last dose, February 21st. And the first 6 months were nonstop, like just pure survival. And then I would say I started getting very small windows. And so it gave me, those are the things, it sounds kind of cliche to say to cling to, but I was like, I feel like normal, or I feel bliss, or I feel just a sense of peace, and I would just cry. And I remember being like, if I can just extend this, and if this is what the people who are ahead of me talk about, where, you start getting glimmers of hope, or you start getting little tiny windows, like ride that wave, which is the wrong saying, but I don't know how else to say it. Like cling to that, like your life depends on it. And I remember doing that. That was a big, big part of it. And I think like I know a lot of people have a hard time being around others, but if you can be around other people who have healthy nervous systems, I really believe there's like an exchange of energy. So if you can, even if it's like a couple of people that believe you, like if you can just kind of spend a little bits of time with them when you can, I really believe that that's helpful. Even though I was having just constant violent images, it was hard to be around people. I would force myself to do it after that point. And I think that's helpful too.
I'm big on that. I think it's because our nervous systems are so dysregulated that a normal, healthy nervous system can actually co-regulate with you.
I believe
help
that.
balance you. And so people don't understand this. I'm just gonna say it here again. But like they're like, Angie, you must not have been that bad that you went to school. And I'm like, no, I had to. It was the only thing reality based with people around me that could keep me regulated somehow. Otherwise, there's no way I could have done this on my own with no other nervous system around me.
Exactly.
And I had to take one class, and I had violent images, and I'm sitting with interacathisia like you wouldn't believe, to hell dimension. But when the teacher looks at me and asks me a question, that split second where my mind tries to put it together was life-saving.
I agree. Totally agree.
People don't understand that, and I honestly, it hurts me that I have to defend myself, but it's like when you're that severe and you're that desperate, you will do anything to stay in reality.
Anything. Yes.
Anything. And that's
Speaking of which, at 7 months when I against all odds, I had reconnected with someone from my past life, and I got pregnant. And that was, I only had a 5% chance because I was 39 and a half. I had chronic disease for many years. And that was my one escape, honestly. Like at that point, I was like, anytime any 10, 20 minute escape from reality, I did it. And I got pregnant, and I'm like, oh my God, like, how am I going to have a baby like this? I was on disability. So I finally did find doctors that validated me after tons of searching. I got a neurologist that confirmed it. I found a GP, like I was fully.
What did they call it though? What did they say?
So my disability form says involuntary skeletal muscle movement disorder, and it does say akathisia on it.
Wow.
And then my neurologist also confirmed withdrawal, even though my CT scan, everything was normal. They saw like my involuntary movements had slowed at some point because I was just trying all these doctors. I finally went to a walk-in doctor, and I was, again, like I had come out of the hospital, but I was still, and she's like, my God, you need a neurologist. And I'm like, thank you. Everybody just tells me that I need a psychiatrist, and I've refused to see them.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I finally was validated. I got disability because I wasn't able to work. And so, yeah, then I get pregnant, and I'm like, how am I going to have a baby? Like, I don't think an akathisic woman can carry a child. Like, how am I going to do this? How am I? Oh, it was just it. So I was going to not proceed with the pregnancy, and then something changed my mind. But I want to tell you, women out there who are going through withdrawal, akathisia or no akathisia, hormones absolutely have an effect. Like, you're not crazy if around your period time you have an increase in symptoms, because in my first trimester, before I even knew I was pregnant, I remember being in the vehicle with my mom and just frantic. I'm like, you have to pull over. I have to start pacing. I'm walking and walking and walking, just bawling my head off, like calling my support group. I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I've just had, again, another major uptick in symptoms. And then I found out like 2 weeks later I was pregnant. The first trimester was absolutely horrible when you're having all of those, hormonal changes. It absolutely has an effect. So I ended up, so my pregnancy was very difficult for that and other reasons. But I ended up at 34 weeks having a healthy baby girl. She's 15 months now.
Wow.
And at 21 months off. So when my daughter was 6 months old, November of 20, 22, something, I have to share this because I started getting these weird sensations in my head, and they weren't like the burning acid fire brain that I had been feeling. It was like a turning on. Like I would feel like a patch of my head here. It was like a staticky, warm, tingling feeling. And then I was like, whoa,
Wow.
that's weird. And then it would go up here, and then bang, it was like my intrusive thoughts that I had had at this point for over 4 years were just shifting, and I would just, my head would just be totally clear. And then I
Amazing.
would get like a spike again, and then I started really going into windows and waves at 21 months off, and then it was just got better and better and better and better since then. So, and
Wow.
I've now like returned to work. I'm a full-time mom. I'm fully functional. I'm still very sensitive to medication. I can't take
Yeah.
anything over the counter. I can't take anything prescription.
Yeah.
But I used to have sensitivities to cleaners, chemicals, perfumes, fragrances, caffeine, artificial sweeteners, and now I don't.
Yeah.
But I cannot take any type of drug, spray, drop,
Supplement.
anything. I can't.
Supplements. Nothing.
No.
What happens if you do?
I like immediately I get an increase in symptoms. I'll feel actually my ears will start ringing first, and I'm like, this is a bad sign. Whenever that starts for me, I know that there's like all of a sudden like too much activity going on in my brain. And then I get that pulsating, shocking through my, I don't know how to, like thrashing, grinding, akathesic feeling like in my
Ugh.
chest, my
Yeah.
stomach, my arm will
Yeah.
start going. And then I've just got, the intrusives will come back, the hallucination type symptoms,
Can't
the
take it.
burning, the brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it'll blip, and then it'll,
Calm
but
back down later.
as long as I don't take anything, I'm fully functional now.
Fully functioning.
Yeah.
So let's see, where should we go next? I mean, I feel like I want to get a little controversial and talk about reinstatement and stabilization, because it's been a hot topic in the communities lately, and all my tapering support groups this last week, they all wanted to talk about what does it mean to get stable, what is reinstatement, how do you know when to cut, what do you cut if you have symptoms, all these like things that patients are learning because our doctors are not telling us. Like, well, it's not having to do with them, it's that nobody knows. Like nobody knows, nobody understands the nervous system. There are no experts in the nervous system. We don't even understand what the hell is going on here. We don't know why your reinstatement didn't work. We don't know why some people reinstate and they're fine. So
Right.
I always come from a place of, I hate the word, but informed consent, meaning you should be presented with all the possibilities of what could happen. If it could help, I always say there's three things. It can make you better, it can make you worse, or nothing could happen. If you
Right.
get worse, can you handle it?
Right.
So that's where I was come from. So tell me what you know about reinstatement, what your decision process was with that, and then what was the outcome? I know we said it earlier, but can you sum it up like that?
Oh, it is a controversial topic. And I want to say I do know some people who were able to reinstate up dose to their original dose and stabilize. But I think my personal opinion is if you're a benzo injured, I don't think it's quite that cut and dry. I know that benzos, I mean, they seem to act so much quicker in that they can go paradoxical, that you get interdose withdrawal, and you're just increasing the dose, you're increasing the amount of times during the day that you're taking them. And it's again, like for me, benzos helped immensely. They took away 90% of my symptoms until they didn't anymore. Then they were creating symptoms. I would take my dose and I would start shaking and moving, and I don't know. Like I think again, yeah, it's one of those things where you have to really weigh out the pros and cons, and you have to talk to people who are knowledgeable about this, because your doctor will automatically say, and like in my situation, well-meaning people will say, well, you were on the drug for years and were fine, and so you should be fine again if you reinstate. But I also don't believe this is as simple as a withdrawal reaction all the time. Like you're just in withdrawal. Because if that were the case, reinstatement would always work. Your body is craving the drug. You take the drug again. If you think about like alcohol, people who start to shake whenever you take a drink and everything goes away, but that's not the case for so many people. So I just don't think it's that cut and dry, but there are a lot of this is not like an isolated vacuum event. People have support systems. Some people will have families that say, we will not support you or house you anymore until you listen to the doctors and get treated for your condition.
Yeah.
So that's a different scenario when people are sort of forced to go back on or to try to find a plan that works. But it's a gamble because, I mean, for me, I finally was like, the drugs were the problem all along. like at this point I could never possibly put one in my mouth again. But again, yeah, you have to weigh the pros and cons. You have to take into account the support systems. It's my family forbid me to take any more drugs after that.
Yeah, I think because I mean, well, first of all, the word you used was craving. Your body's craving the drug, and I don't think it's craving. I think your body's dependent on the drug.
That's
So
that.
when it's
Yeah, it's not like
missing,
a high. Yeah, right.
you're not like for it, but it's
Chasing
like
a
your body's
right.
used to it. It has reached homeostasis with the presence of the drug. So then when you
Right.
remove the drug and it doesn't work, it like hopefully if you give it back, then everything evens out and you're back to normal or whatever you were before. But it seems like something in that for some people, when you take it away and then you give it back, that does not go well. You know what I mean?
No.
I've seen in the same tapering support group, I have people that were tapering the exact same drug, Cymbalta, duloxetine, whatever.
Mhm.
They tapered all the way down. They started getting symptoms. They went back up. One person got better. One person got worse.
Right. It's
You don't
such
know.
that's why like I mean they don't even nobody really knows exactly how these drugs work in the first place. Like you said, there's nobody who's really an expert in the nervous system, but nobody actually knows how these drugs even work. Because it's so much of it doesn't make sense. Withdrawal can cause the same symptoms as a reinstatement. So it's like on the drug you get the symptoms, off the drug you get the symptoms. That doesn't even make sense. You know, there's
Well, and the withdrawal thing. I just like the word just gets on my nerves. Yes, you're withdrawing the drug, but this
right.
is an injury to me. It's not withdrawal.
Absolutely.
And the reason I
Yes.
say that is because like think of in the case of like there's tons of people out there. I can think of one who's only taken 54 pills of sleeping drugs over a course of 3 years, and she has
Right.
an injury and she is in withdrawal, but she has neurotoxicity or I don't know. The language is the problem for me. Like
Absolutely.
even when you said intradose withdrawal, paradoxical reaction, it's like, what is all that? I don't know. It's the
Exactly.
nervous system is
Yeah.
pissed off. That's all I
Yeah.
know. It doesn't even
Same.
matter what drug it is or what caused it. You had a bunch of drugs thrown at you and your body doesn't like it and screwed up, and you got to get off as safe and sound as possible. And unfortunately, there's nobody going to help you, and there's no expert out there to tell you. You can get lots of opinions, you can read lots of forums, and guess what? It's up to you. And this is all you got.
See, that's the problem I have is with that word opinion. Like this is supposed to be a branch of medicine. Medicine is never supposed to be based on opinion. It's supposed to be observable and measurable, and it isn't. And that's another problem. Nobody knows how their bodies. Some people take 3 pills, and it's like something goes off. Like that can't be a withdrawal reaction. You know, like what is going
Not
on in these
withdrawal.
people?
Yeah, and that we call that tachyphylaxis,
Yes,
which I forgot the word for like 3 years, and then I finally heard it again when Adele said
yes,
it.
I've heard that word.
I was like, it's the in other words, guys that are listening, we're getting in the weeds a little bit here, but like a person can take one sertraline and a person could take it for 5 years and they have the exact same injury. The person that only
Right.
took one pill is not in withdrawal. They only took one pill. They didn't withdraw. They didn't, you know what I'm saying? But they can have the same exact reaction as somebody took it for 5 years and was tapering slowly and
Yes,
started getting
totally.
symptoms.
That's why it doesn't make any sense if you to
Right.
just call it, you know, yeah,
Withdrawal.
that's why the wording is very confusing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I just think it's tricky, and I would never badmouth a group. Never. I mean, they saved my life. It's just like it's just hard because there's comments. You don't know the people's full story. You don't know.
Yes.
You can't get all that information like what we're talking about when you see hundreds of cases and you've been in the community for years and years and years, you know,
Mhm.
versus you come in one day and you're trying to figure out what happened to you. And then you're like
Yes.
rushing to make a decision and oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? It's scary. You know what I mean?
Well, I've seen it happen again and again where people are like, oh, I read this person's story. My God, like they've been in withdrawal for 5 years. They've had no windows. But then I'll say to this person, I've had private conversations with that person, and you only know 25% of the story based on the thread because they leave a lot of stuff out and it's very misleading. So I think that's where the forums can become like they can become toxic at a certain point. Mhm.
Yeah.
But they also can be life-saving. There's great success stories and
they give tapering guidelines of what other people do and case histories and things that doctors don't even know about, and doctors are learning from us.
I know.
It's terrible.
It's very backwards. Yeah.
We're okay. So God, we have so much we could talk about. What are you
I
feeling
know.
like? What do you feel? There's so
I know there's so many
like
topics around this one topic. Yeah. I just think that what do I want to say?
Let's talk about mindset. But no, you finish your thought. Did you have a
No,
thought?
go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just thinking, if you're okay, looking back on your withdrawal experience, your injury, whatever you want to call it now. See, now I don't even know. I don't even know what to call
I
it.
know. Me neither.
thinking about your experience, what were mistakes you made? What were things that were good? What can you help others that are in the process think about while they're going through it? Like the good thing, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Things to hold on to, things to stay away from, things to repel yourself. Like
I always tell people, like, because a lot of people will say, I don't want generic advice. I don't want you to tell me to go stand with my feet in the grass. Like, that's not going to help me. I have this severe chemical brain injury. Like, don't tell me stuff like that. But I'll tell you, like, the things that are sort of general for general good health are cumulative. So I think that every little thing you can do in this that would be helpful if you didn't have this injury towards good health, I think is cumulative. So things that you can do, like grounding and being in the sun. I know some people are sensitive to the heat. Walking if you can, gentle exercise, again, surrounding yourself with people with healthy nervous systems, having a support system or a group of, or even one person that knows what you're going through on a like a firsthand basis. Because I think, you know, in your real life, you can feel so isolated because you're like, nobody understands this. Nobody maybe even believes this. My doctors haven't validated this. So I feel so incredibly alone. And then you almost feel like this pressure to get better, because sometimes your family, who might be well-meaning, is like, how long are you going to be sick for? Like, what's actually wrong with you? The doctors just say you need to take medication. You need to get this treatment. You know what I mean? So I think having a little, even if it's a small support group of people who can really encourage you and you can kind of walk through this together is helpful. And then also in your real life, like doing those small things that contribute to health over the long run. I always tell people too, like, your diet just isn't about what you eat, it's what you expose yourself to. Because I know like sometimes you can watch something on TV that triggers a memory or that's somewhat upsetting. All of those things matter, even like the music you listen to, the people you talk to, all of that over time. And I want to tell people too, there's so many times when they're like, I'm giving up. Like, I'm not getting any better. It's been 9 months, 10 months, 2 months, whatever. I'm not getting any better. And for me, it was literally like a switch. Like I said, I felt these patchy, weird feelings in my brain, and then something just changed. And I remember telling people, I'm healing. I can physically feel it. And up to that point, I was like planning my way out, you know, and then I'm going through my pregnancy, like, I'm not going to be able to raise this baby, looking into adoption. And like, I'm so thankful that I never did, because now like the appreciation you have for life on the other side of this is like you've never experienced before. Reading a book, having a cup of, you know, decaf coffee, sitting with a friend, going out and going for a swim, like you just cry. I made a video on my YouTube channel about this a couple of weeks ago where I'm just bawling my head off because I'm like, please don't give up. Like, this can change so fast and your life will never be the same, but in a good way. Because a lot of people will say, well, I'll just be traumatized forever. What's the point of going on?
No, you're not.
It changes. It really does change. And yeah, that would be another thing I would say to people is it can change really fast, even if you've been suffering for a long time and your symptoms are extremely bad. Because I remember thinking, I've had these thoughts in my head for so long, my brain's not going to forget them. They're like wired together. It's all etched in, you know, and then it's part of the injury. And then it just lifts and you're like, what the hell, you know?
Amazing. I mean, this is my favorite subject. My favorite subject is like, once you get on the other side and you start getting these moments. I asked somebody about it like 2 weeks ago. I said, are you getting the moments yet? And she's like, oh yeah. She goes, I sat on the grass and I was looking at the dew and I just started crying.
Yeah.
Like, it's just
and
so
that's what
beautiful.
happens.
And I think, and listen, I'm 7.5 years off. They don't stop. Like, they are not stopping here. They're like continuing. I mean, even just this weekend, I had like really a great time with the person I just met. And I, even in the moment, I was just like, oh my God, life is so amazing. Like, I could die right now and I'd be like the happiest person alive. You know what I mean?
It sounds so cheesy, but it's actually really
I'm
true.
Trying, and I'm, and it's like, I can't even explain it. Are we high? Like, what's wrong with that?
I know. I know. It's almost like a euphoric.
Yeah. I don't like, even that's why I think I travel in the van so much, like the way I do, because maybe I'm addicted to it or something. I don't know, but it's like, I'll go to these certain places and I'll get that feeling again. It'll provoke it. And I'm like, oh my God, like life
like the
is
good
so
feelings.
Delicious. Yes.
I know.
It's just like, everything. So it's not about like, when you get to the other side, like, I want my life back. I want my career. I want all the money back that I lost. I want my friendships. Yeah. You're going to get all that back probably, plus some, but it's deeper and it's wider and
way
it's
deeper.
Way,
profound. It's profound.
Like, I the way I put it is like, I live in the present moment now. Like, honestly, God, Melissa, I know where I'm going to tonight. No, tomorrow. I know I'm sleeping here tonight. Tomorrow I'm going to a concert in Las Vegas, which I could not have done for years, but I don't know where I'm going to be on Monday. I have no clue, and I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's not something I'm going to worry about. I will figure it out when it comes to me. I will get the impulse, where you want to go. Okay, let's go. You know what I mean? And I mean, I'm lucky to live that lifestyle, but I'm saying, like, I don't worry about stuff. It's not about like, I want to go sit in an expensive hotel or buy a new
So
pair of
true.
shoes. No, it's like, I could sit here and look at a palm tree. You saw my palm trees, and I could just sit there with wonder and just like, it's beautiful. It's amazing. Oh my
I
God.
know. I know. And it actually, I used to get annoyed at that when I was early on, because I'm like, oh, whatever, like that's never going to happen
People
for
are
me.
high.
Another thing I tell people too is track your progress. And I, not in an obsessive way where you're writing your symptoms down every single day, like every hour, because you don't want to get obsessed. You can get obsessed with symptoms. But I used to make like videos every once in a while, and or talk to my family or write in a journal and say, here's how where I've come in the last 3 months, 6 months. And because sometimes like the wins, I feel like I do this all the time, but like it can be so small and the shifts can be so small, but then over time you're like, wow, I can do so much more now than I could 6 months ago. So it can be gradual, and then it can all of a sudden be really quick.
Yeah. My
Yeah.
theory with that is like, or what I've witnessed, I should say, is that, and experienced myself, is that as your like injured brain calms down and your healed part emerges, once you get to like a certain point, you're off to the races. They're out of the group.
Yes.
They're not writing success stories. And there's something about that when that switch starts to flip and you start going, it's like things start very quickly. However, what do you think about this? Ooh, this is another controversial topic. Oh my goodness, here we go. Like, do you think you need to do anything on withdrawal, or do you just wait around and wait for a magical unicorn to land on you? What is your opinion on that?
So my opinion is, like, I think your body naturally knows what to do, as long as you're not continuing to burden it with, potential triggers. For me, it's any type of like prescription. So for me, that's a key part in keeping it, like I have to keep those away from my body. That's me personally. Again, but it's those small cumulative things, even at the very beginning, because some people will be like, I can't even go outside, I can't walk, I can't do anything. Like just the small things, anything that you can do that even gives you any tiny bit of feeling anything, like just build on it. So I think there's a fine line between keeping your nervous system cocooned and stretching yourself. I don't say like pushing yourself, but I think you can also get in the, you can get stuck in a pattern of, well, I don't want to go outside because it could, this could trigger me, this could trigger me. I think in the beginning that's true, but it's a balance between, and you learn that over time. Like you want to keep your nervous system from being rattled, but you also want to, stretch yourself and maybe try going for a short walk or try going for a short swim, or I don't know, like, I think all of those things. And then all of a sudden, like the good and the normal stuff outweighs, and you're not thinking about benzo injury all day long. And you're like, wow, I'm doing normal things and thinking normal things and thinking about what potential job I could have in the future, rather than how am I going to survive the next minute? Because that's all you do in acute. And that's not abnormal to be like that. So it is a bit of a fine line between nurturing and stretching, because you want to eventually build your life back up.
Yeah, the way I kind of think about it is like, you would never ask someone with akathisia to go on a roller coaster. Like, duh.
Right.
No.
Right.
There's a certain point where you got to let things calm down. And the way I see it is things will unfold naturally. Like you will get an impulse, like you'll start to feel better and you'll be like, okay, I think I want to get in the car. You better go get in the car. But that doesn't mean drive to Ohio. That means like drive to the mailbox, turn around and come back, end on a success. True. And you tiptoe back in very slowly and gently, and you pull back like before the bomb goes off again. You know what I mean?
So that's a really good way of putting it.
That's the way I say it. Is like you're dipping your toe in a pool and then you pull back and you go rest. And you start to work with that line, like how far can I push it? And you might screw up. I've done it many times.
I've done it many times too.
Like I way overdid that. Like I think I remember an early withdrawal. I went to a pumpkin patch, an apple picking with my family. It was hot. It was sweaty. I was driving with someone else, which I never did because I need my own escape hatch,
Yes.
And it was just like, I think my brain's gonna explode. And I was in bed for another like 3 weeks after that. And so you kind of learn, and some days it's a good day to try these things, and some days it's bad. But I really just say, you're going to get the impulse in your body and it's going to say,
Absolutely.
let's see. And it does take courage. It's not going to be like easy. And sometimes it's really scary and you're not sure like how it's going to turn out. But I don't think I've ever went back and like regretted anything. Like I
Right.
really haven't regretted, like, do I regret trying this? There was days I just said, no, I can't do it. There's no way.
Yeah.
But I do think I also, maybe you agree with me, maybe not, but like there's certain symptoms where I cannot just lay around. I have to do something.
Yes.
Like my symptoms were such that like I have to go constantly. Like I have to be doing something around people, you know, most of the time, maybe not in the acute stage, but later years, it was like I cannot lay here and just feel my symptoms. I will lose it, you know?
Mm-hmm. And you can't, like, if your symptoms are severe, it doesn't, because you're doing stuff doesn't mean you're necessarily able to distract. I couldn't distract. I just
No.
did it anyway. But I was still living in my mental hell all the
Yep.
time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really tough thing. But thinking back to those early days is difficult. So if you're in that mode where you just cannot distract, you're like, I'm trying to do stuff, but I'm just living in my symptoms 24/7. Like that's not
That's where you gotta be.
abnormal. Yeah.
That's where I was. Absolutely. And it was me scrolling Facebook groups looking for one nugget to self-regulate, one little thing, like one other person had my symptom from 2018 or whatever, you know what I mean? Like I just gotta
Totally.
find whatever I can to stay alive. So yeah, that beginning phase, especially if you're a severe case, it's really just stay alive. It ain't about trying things or courage or nothing. No.
Yeah.
You
Right.
do what you got to do to sustain life. What do you think? What's the role of diet, and what do you think about diet? I get that question all the time.
Yeah, I've been asked that too. So I mean, again, it's one of those things where it's not one size fits all. Some people find, oh, keto helps, and some people find keto hurts, and some people find whole foods. And for me personally, like, because I've been a diabetic for so many years, I know that the more your blood sugar is unbalanced, even if you aren't diabetic, the more cortisol is released. So if you're eating a lot of empty carbs and sugars and you're not having, kind of a protein to balance it out, and your sugars are bouncing around like this, even as non-diabetic, it does release extra cortisol. So I think if you can sort of either snack regularly or eat, healthy protein and just have, eat as clean as possible, it does help, because it does let your body kind of cool off some of those stress hormones from that. That's the only thing that really helped me, was finding a little bit better of a balance with my blood sugar. But there are other people who, do raw vegan and they are helped, and some do carnivore. And yeah, it's very individual. But I wouldn't say, oh, there's one thing that's going to help every single person.
That's nice. I made a little ebook, nutrition book. Maybe Jill, can you put it in the comments for everybody? It's in my drive under nutrition. But mine's just eat less crap.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
just eat less crap. And what that really means is stop doing this, because if you eat crap, it's going to do this to your body. So I don't care if it's paleo or keto or zone or whatever, vegan. I tried all of them and I had to find what worked best for me. So I feel like everybody, you need to try what works for you. And but the way I looked at it is like your body and your nervous system is under a crisis, a healing crisis. It's trying to heal. So you need to support that if you can, if it's possible. But the first year off, all I ate was like protein bars. I drank smoothies, chicken soup, bananas, and oranges. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all I could eat. That's all I could do.
Sometimes you just can't cook.
That's all I could do.
Yeah. And I think avoiding sort of the obvious excitotoxic stuff like MSG and sweeteners and like artificial dyes, I think is important for everyone, because those are known excitotoxins. So I don't think that extra salt really is helpful.
No. Okay, so I think we're coming to the end. I heard you're a new coach with Dr. Joseph with During's practice. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
And I know this is new to you, but you've been doing it like I did it. We were doing it in the community for years for free and just like under the table, and just and honestly, coaching for me was it's kind of sad looking back, but I was like, I'm telling these people they're going to heal, but I'm sitting here thinking I'm not.
I know.
It's so hard, but I did. Thank God, But in a way, it kept me going. Like if I can help other people get out of my symptoms, get out of myself, that'll help. It just helped me. So let's talk about your coaching. Like, what do you like about it? What's your philosophy? What's gonna be your new role at Joseph During's practice?
Well, I thought that I would never, ever, like, once I felt better, I'm like, I'm leaving this community forever. I don't ever want to talk about this ever again. But it actually is healing to help others. Like it's very, it's rewarding, and it's awesome to be able to give other people hope, because I was once in that position where I'm like, my God, like I never, ever, 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 I will never feel normal again. And then I remember once it started happening, I was almost like, I have to tell this story because people need to hear that there are recoveries from severe setbacks, severe symptoms, severe withdrawals, adverse akathisia, everything. So what I'm going to be doing with him is mostly, so I'm not a tapering coach per se. I didn't do a lot of tapering. I wasn't really able to. So I'm a supportive coach to offer, hope, especially for people with movement disorders and akathisia, and a family liaison. So in a past life, I did a lot of nonprofit management work where I was liaising between clients and their health professionals and their families. So speaking directly to family members and saying, helping them to support the person who's suffering. So that will be part of my role as well. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm officially starting in 2 weeks, but I've already been doing this sort of informally for a while now. But it's great to be able to offer that hope to people, especially if they're severe.
Yeah. I find the thing about coaching is like because our nervous systems have repaired to an extent.
Yes.
And so when the person can see like that was a severe case, she healed, her brain healed, she's got her life back, she's doing well, that like helps regulate them, and
Absolutely.
like, gets back in like the reality of the situation. Yeah, you're going to heal just like we did.
Well, I've seen physically with my own eyes those people who are very, uncomfortable and moving around during a conversation, and you can tell that they're very uncomfortable. And then as, the hope conversation continues, and as, they start to, you can see some of that relaxing, in those conversations and giving that hope, and you can see it in front of your eyes. I mean, it's not healing or curing them in that one conversation, but you can see that there is that exchange there, and there's some calming happening to the system. You can see it.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have a couple questions. One person asked, was anyone recommending yoga, counseling, dietary changes, any non-pharmaceutical interventions for you when you had your original root cause?
Well, people are always giving you their advice, you should try this, you should try this. And for me, a lot of it was like supplements, or recommending supplements and recommending diets. Like I've had a lot of comments like, you need to try carnivore, and you need to try this, you need to try N-acetylcysteine, and you need to get the glutathione, and so I had a lot of people recommending, and same with TMS, the transcranial magnetic stimulation, you need to try this. And again, it's such an individual thing. So I would try things and they either wouldn't help at all or they would make it worse. And so I had to kind of formulate my own recovery plan, because that's another thing that's so difficult with this. Everybody is different. And so that sounds like a cop-out answer, but it's the truth. Like what works for one person doesn't work for everyone. And for me, it's cumulative. If you can do small things every day that contribute to sort of overall health without, trying anything too crazy or, $1,000 in supplements, I think it all helps over time.
Oh, this is a good question from a psychiatric nurse practitioner. Thank you for being here. She says, or he, what would have helped you even in some small way when you were hospitalized?
One of the hardest parts was just being like, nobody would just sit with me. Like even when I was in the regular hospital, on the regular hospital floors, when they were doing different tests for me and before they put me in the ward, I would have nurses that would come in and spend some time with me. I know that's not always possible if it's really busy, but just someone that would just come in and talk to me in a humane way, rather than being like, well, we want you to try this pill. We want you to try this pill. Or they, I felt like I was just rotting alone in the room, where I was pacing around and nobody even looked at me. And there was no humanness. Like there was no conversation. I was just a psych patient. I was locked in my room with, there was no curtain pulls or nothing where I could hurt myself. And I'm like, really? Like nobody can even just have a conversation with me and they could find out, hey, I used to be normal, and I took all these drugs and now I feel like a crazy person. And just that humane side was really missing for me. All right, last question. I think we're both gonna have to answer this one. What do you do when you're so sensitive to other medications, but you need antibiotics for infections or surgery? Oof, that's a really, really tough one. Well, I mean, for me, going through pregnancy and childbirth, I was absolutely terrified. So I hired a doula to be an advocate for me. One thing that helped me because I was on my own for appointments, I got an akathisia card. So I don't know if this person has akathisia or not. I was very, very adamant in showing it to everybody and saying, you know, I can't take this, I will not take this. But the infection thing is tough because, I mean, me as a diabetic, I'm more prone to infections. They can become more severe and life-threatening. So and I'm very, very, very sensitive to any medication. So that's a really, really tough one. Prevention is obviously the most helpful. So I'm very, very, very careful with everything. Like I try to do everything that contributes to health, but obviously some things are unavoidable. So I try to find a natural alternative. I've learned to trust my body more over time. I think we live in a society where as soon as one thing is wrong, it's like you immediately need to take a pill, and you do it too soon when your body is capable sometimes of just getting rid of it on its own.
Right.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm curious what I don't know if you were as sensitive, Angie, to things.
I didn't even try. I was too scared.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I didn't try nothing until I was 4 years off. And then I tried vitamin D, vitamin C, because COVID hit and I was terrified that I was going to get COVID. So I was like, well, I better try to prevent it first of all. So I did start supplements then. And I'm not going to lie, I felt the vitamin D, the first drop I took. And then I was like, uh-oh, I feel like I just drank a pot of coffee. But then I was like, I think maybe my body needs it. That's why I'm feeling that. So don't be scared of it. You know, it's okay.
That's a good point.
So I tried to I would start really small. Like I'd put like the drop on my, and I would just go like that. And I would get gummies of fish oil and just like pull the toe off of a gummy bear, you know, like I went really slow. But I mean, even later, I think I was 6 years off and I was actually in the same city, and I tried a supplement for breast health, and everything in there I had already tried before, but then there was some other weird supplement in there that it was like American skull cap, but the benzo list said to avoid Chinese skull cap. So I was like, okay, well maybe it's fine. I took it, and I'm telling you, it felt like gravity disappeared and I was flying through the roof of my van, and I was like, oh my God, like what is happening, you know? And then a couple hours later it went down. I was scared. I got that doom feeling came back, and I'm like 6 years off, like what the hell is going on here, you know? But so what I've recognized in other people that I coach in my own life is like there's a sensitivity period, and it could be 1 year, it could be 2 years, it could be 5 years. I don't know what it is, but in that period, like you really got to protect your nervous system and try at all costs to do natural alternatives first, try to avoid it in the first place. But sometimes it's unavoidable. Like I know people that have gotten kidney cancer surgery and they were fine. Other people took an antibiotic and they got a setback.
Same with like when I had my baby, I ended up with HELLP syndrome, which can be life-threatening. Me and my baby were like, they're like, you're going to die if we don't rush you to the children's hospital 3 hours away and have your emergency C-section. I'm like, I don't want a spinal block. I don't want a spinal block. And I had to have one, and I was terrified, but I'm like, hey, this is going to keep me and my baby alive. This is literally life or death. I'll put up with it, whatever comes back. I got to make it through for my baby. And you have to almost reach for something like like it has to, for me, be in a dire situation, and then you have to almost grasp for whatever can bring you that hope. Okay, if I have a spike, I have a spike, you know, I'll get through it. I've gotten through acute before. I'm doing this for my baby and my own life. Like it's a balance though. Like it is scary when you're sensitive.
And what happened was, I think the best advice I ever got was I met some ladies, they were like 10 years off, one was 12 years off at a conference, and I was like 3 years off, and I was like, what do you guys do when you have to take an antibiotic or you get a surgery or something? And they said, Angie, you just have to get through it. And that was, to me, like the best advice there is. Like it's possible that could happen. It didn't happen to me, you know, I made it through, and I don't live in that fear anymore, because you feel your nervous system getting stronger. So you're like, I think I could handle it. If that, I wouldn't want to, and I'm terrified because I hear all the stories of the scary stuff, you know, but I feel strong enough that I think I could handle it, and my body has repaired to some degree that I would be okay, you know. But there definitely is a sensitivity period. We have to be careful for some.
There's a period where you can feel that you're healing, like, and you're like sailing through, and you don't have to take any meds, and you're like, I'm feeling like my life is coming back, but it takes even longer for your nervous system to strengthen. So it's one thing to start recovering, but then over time it's straight. But it doesn't, like, you're not going to be avoiding everything forever. Because I was really sensitive for a while, and I wouldn't paint my toenails, I wouldn't dye my hair, I only cleaned with water. Like it was like that, but that doesn't last forever. It very slowly, as it recovers, it strengthens. But there is a sensitivity period, and it's different for everyone. It's so true.
All right. So I know I could talk to you forever. Let me see if there's, we got all the questions, the main ones. Okay. So let's end on hope. That's my favorite way to end. What hope have you witnessed? What healing have you seen? What can you leave with people that are watching?
Well, I've seen almost everybody, or yeah, everybody they still talk to from my original support group from 2 years ago, everybody's doing better. Some of us have, had babies, gotten married, are getting married, went back to work, went back to live on their own, because most of us, I think all of us were either living with our kids, our parents, because we just couldn't be alone. We had the monophobia. So everybody has improved. Some people have recovered, some have just improved, but everybody is better than they were. So that's, and you never know when things can change, like no matter how severe things are. I've seen people spontaneously recover. I've seen people slowly recover. I've seen the windows and waves recovery. But it just seems like if you can just hold on and do what you can to survive and, nurture and take the best care of yourself possible, you will get better.
That's it.
I've seen it so many times in the
I
years
see
that
it
I've been in this.
daily.
Yeah, you would see it even more.
I do. I mean, people, like I say, people that started with me a year and a half ago, they're like on cruises, they're going shopping,
I
they're
know.
like driving, getting their hair done. They'll come on the screen and I'll be like, who are you?
I
You
know.
look like a totally different person. Who's this lady? I haven't seen you in 6 months,
It's actually one of the most amazing things to witness.
It's my favorite. That's why I do it.
Right.
I get to watch you guys heal. It's like a sacred honor and blessing to me,
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Totally.
Okay. There was one more question I just saw. Somebody asked about what is the akathisia card? Can you tell them what that is?
So the Akathisia Alliance. So if you Google akathisia, I think I just Googled Akathisia Alliance Foundation or Akathisia Alliance card. So it's a little wallet card. You get 2 copies of it. So it'll say your patient name. It'll say your full name on the front. And then on the inside, it'll describe akathisia in not like the gentle medical terms where it's like you might just be having uncomfortable, a little bit of restlessness. It explains in detail neuropsychiatric, what it's caused by, the meds that make it worse. And then there's a whole list on the back of this patient cannot take these dopamine, what are they called? Dopamine agonists or so there's a whole list of them. Sorry. Antagonists. I can never remember. So some are psych drugs, some are antiemetics, some are like antibiotics. There's all different ones. I highly recommend it. I carry mine everywhere. And so it was really helpful when I was navigating the medical system while pregnant, which was next level when you have this.
Yeah. And some people wear a bracelet for everybody. And there's my favorite one is roadid.com. You can get like a little bracelet made that says like akathisia, do not give fluoroquine and antibiotics, do not give Cipro,
Reglan.
blah, 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 Reglan, all the antiemetics, blah, all that stuff. So yeah, I can't even say it.
They're only like $5 or by no donation. So you're cheap.
Not, cheap. All right. So if people want to get to know you or talk to you or follow you, where do they go? Can you tell everybody?
So I actually have a YouTube channel where I just am documenting this, like psychiatric drug withdrawal reactions recovery. So I don't know. I think I sent you the link. So I don't know if that'll be in the description. It's just my name. It's just my first and last name. And so you can follow me on my journey there. And yeah, if you want to contact me privately, I usually list my email address in the description on my videos. So some people aren't as comfortable commenting. So that's fine.
Perfect. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Melissa. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything we missed?
Yeah, just, keep the hope, you guys. Like no matter how bad things are now, it's not going to stay that way. Like just cling and get support as much as you can and do what you need to do to get through, because it will not stay this way forever. I tell people that all the time, and thank you, Angie, for having me on your channel. It's been great to be able to share my story.
Of course. And last thing, I just have one more question. I'm just curious. How does it feel to be almost healed?
Surreal. I cry a lot of tears of happiness. Like I remember being in a coffee shop a few months ago and just being like I just feel normal. Like my body feels warm and normal and relaxed and my mind is clear. And I just remember just going home and crying. And I filmed the YouTube channel that day, or a YouTube video that day. And I'm just like, just the appreciation for life, the happiness, the joy, the things that used to matter don't matter anymore. And the small things are everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful way to end. Beautiful. All right. Well, thanks, guys. I'll see you. I think, what is it? I think we might have an interview on Monday with Amy. Amy and I went through withdrawal together. We're both almost 8 years off. So I'll have her next week. I'm working on the next group of interviewees. So if anyone has any suggestions or who you want to hear from or what kind of things and topics, please leave them in the comments. We will gather them up and I will find those people for you. But anyway, thank you for attending. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for your work. Thank you for sticking around. You probably made that plea like I did. Like, I swear if you get me through this, I will stick around and help people. I don't think I did that. I don't think I
did.
did that, but I think I'm not the kind of person to just leave. Like, I'm like,
Right.
this is bullshit. You know, I got to help
I
these
thought
people.
I would leave, but then I was like, I do want to help people if I ever recover from this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for sticking around, and thank you. And also I'll make a post. I just got a text message that we will have akathisia cards from a different person, and I will put them on in a couple days if she gets them to me. I just got the text. Okay.
Cool.
Thank you
Okay.
guys. I'll see you
See you
there.
guys.
See you later. Hang in there. Bye,
Bye
everybody.
bye.